Welcome to today's Snack and Learn webinar. Just mentioning the housekeeping items before we get going. The presentation slides are available to download in the handout box on the GoToWebinar control panel. There will be time also for question and answers at the end of the presentation. So if you can log your questions in the question box, again, this is can be found on the control panel. I will hand it over to Dr. Oliver to start the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, many thanks and welcome everyone to today's Snack and Learn webinar, which is on a strategic approach to implementing the natural capital approach and nature-based solutions. What we want to talk about today, I want to provide a brief introduction to myself, and then we'll talk a bit about the challenge we all face. So why do we need nature-based solutions in natural capital approach? Brief introduction to the nature tool, which we employed for the specific case study we want to talk about. So I want to give you a very practical example how this has been done, and then also some of the policy drivers behind this. And then want to spend a fair amount on a water industry case study. But I should note that this is not only relevant to the water industry, but certainly be beyond the sector. And then, as I will mention, in the end, we will have plenty of time for questions and answers. So a bit about myself. My name is Oliver Hölzinger. I'm based in the UK, in Birmingham. I'm the UK's Natural Capital Technical Lead and Technical Director within the Nature Advisory Team, which has a focus on natural capital and strategic biodiversity net gain. My background is in ecological economics, so in the past I did a lot of natural capital accounting and also environmental cost benefit analysis, for example. And advice on the implementation of the natural capital approach at both the strategic and the project level. And furthermore, let the development of the nature tool I briefly will introduce in a bit, because we use it specifically for this project. So a bit about the challenge. So why should we be concerned about an enhanced natural capital alongside biodiversity? Well, economic development over the last decades had many benefits, but has also led to a continuous decline of our natural environment and the benefits it provides. Nature is a valuable asset, our natural capital. It provides us with essential ecosystem services and benefits, including carbon storage and vegetation soils, natural flood risk regulation, opportunities for outdoor recreation, including attached to physical and mental health benefits, and many more. It's therefore not just a good to have, but essential for our well-being and economic prosperity. And the natural capital approach is essentially think about nature as a valuable asset that benefits people through the services it provides. Development and land use changes are key drivers for long-term natural capital decline. We can see, however, policy shifts from mitigating negative impacts on the natural environment to aiming for environmental enhancements through smart planning and design. And this represents a significant opportunity for the wider built environment sector by moving away from being part of the problem to becoming part of the solution by delivering net gains for the environment. The question is how, though. So how do we actually implement that? And that's where the nature tool comes in. So implementing net gains in terms of its functionality, natural capital, and ecosystem services is challenging. And objectively measuring and demonstrating success even more so, given the complexity and inherent trade-offs of ecosystems and their functions. A key industry challenge to be resolved was therefore how natural capital impacts and net gains for the environment can be objectively and efficiently measured and assessed. And that is where the nature tool comes in, which we see here on the slide. So the nature tool is a tool to assess natural capital impact at the project scale, and it predicts changes to natural capital across 17 ecosystem services, as well as physical and mental health benefits, simply expressed through percentage change, as we see here on the right-hand side of this slide. The nature tool works on a scoring system based on published evidence accompanied by expert knowledge. And the flexibility of the tool means that you can work with little and little detailed data as well as with more comprehensive data as and where available. And we can also apply the same model at much larger geographies such as the state or city level. WSP developed the nature tool together with more than 30 organizations involved in the built environment industry. So it's really a tool developed by the industry for the industry. And I should also note that we are currently starting to develop Nature Tool 2.0 and are also exploring opportunities for international Nature Tool adaptation. So at the moment, the Nature Tool is optimized for the UK context, but we are already in discussions with WSP colleagues around the world to have adopted models and adopted tools for other target markets in other parts of the world. So what can the nature tool be used for at the project level? Well, we can use it to inform, for example, site selection and optioneering to select sites with the least adverse impact. We can use it to inform planning and design, to optimize design for natural capital. We can inform compensation for unavoidable adverse natural capital impacts, which can then be offset. We can use the tool to inform business cases, to demonstrate wider environmental enhancements beyond economic considerations from projects, and indeed to feed into reporting to demonstrate positive contributions to the environment and society. And what we more focus on here is so what can we do use the nature tool model for at a strategic level. So we can and have indeed in the past established a statewide natural capital baselines, which act as baseline to track future progress and future impact. We can create spatial heat mapping and spatial heat maps, as we see here for an example site on the slide, which indicate areas with high or low natural capital and ecosystem service provision, which can help to target nature-based solutions in areas where the demand is high and the supply is low. And therefore in areas where these nature-based solutions would be most effective. We can also use the tool for corporate-wide aggregation to monitor and manage impacts. So we can pull the results from various projects together and then have an organization-wide dashboard of natural capital impacts and hopefully improvements and enhancements. And indeed, it can again feed into corporate and sustainability reporting and disclosure. For example, to meet regulator or investor requirements and to demonstrate positive contributions to the environment and society. So nature-based solutions and natural capital approach is fundamental in achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals as well. So here on this slide, we see the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals and how can we achieve, for example, no poverty, zero hunger, and good health and well-being without climate action, life on land, life below water, or clean water and sanitation. So natural capital, which is very much in the biosphere element of this diagram, is essential for enabling all the other sustainable development goals as well. So it's very much as a basis and the foundation of sustainable development goals. So as a case study today, I want to talk about a water company here in the UK, where we implemented the natural capital approach. UK water companies face increased expectations and pressure from the regulator called Ofwat to deliver wider environmental benefits in terms of ecosystem services beyond clean and reliable water. And the water company made, for example, a commitment to the regulator to assess natural capital across 100% of its estate by 2025. And we see similar expectations from stakeholders to the water company to really do more than just providing clean, reliable water, but really have a positive impact on the wider environment. And the challenge the company faced, and that's why they came to us, is how can we actually implement that, and how can we achieve, measure, and demonstrate these wider positive impacts. And we provided the solution, contributed the solution to that with an estate-wide natural capital baseline using the nature tool model, and by integrating the nature tool into capital delivery projects, including providing training and guidance. There's some water industry specific drivers why the water company is so keen on looking into natural capital and the natural capital approach and the employment of nature-based solutions. They come from the strategic angle as well as from a project angle. I'm not going into the detail of that, but essentially the regulator offered as well as other government regulators and agencies are basic demand from water companies in the UK to do more and to have wider positive impacts on the natural environment. And these were the key drivers for engaging us and driving this forward. So we started engaging with the client back in 2020. And here's a bit of a time series of the different assessment steps and contributions we provided. And I won't go into the detail here, but essentially we started in a position where we didn't even have a complete habitat baseline. Moving to a position where we establish a complete natural capital baseline and created a nature optioneering toolkit to rapidly assess natural capital impacts of development footprints, and furthermore integrated natural capital into their processes such as capital delivery projects. So with our support, the company will now assess the natural capital impact of all new major capital delivery projects and is aiming to achieve a no net loss in natural capital from these projects. And the nature tool plays a critical part in ensuring that this can happen. And now we'll talk about a couple of the projects and the contributions we made to help the company on their natural capital journey. The first one is a natural capital baseline. This is a typical nature to results table. So that's how this looks like. We have here on the left-hand side the different ecosystem services and benefits assessed by the tool. And then based on the scoring system, based on the existing habitats that are present, as well as some other indicators in relation, for example, to the level of accessibility, which is particularly important for informing these top cultural ecosystem services. We essentially generated a baseline score. And this is a total baseline score, and this is per hectare baseline score. These don't mean so much at this stage, but they will become very meaningful when we revisit the estate in a couple of years. And then we can compare the baseline scores to the updated scores. And the aim is hopefully by enhancing natural capital as part of the project, that the overall scores also increase for the company to demonstrate wider environmental enhancements from the operations and from the estate. We also established based on the same model ecosystem services heat maps, which we see here for the 17 ecosystem services assessed by the tool. And this is only an example site here. We have established that for the whole estate, covering more than 4,000 hectares. And you can basically zoom in using GIS software into every place and every site they have. And then assess, is there a deficit, for example, for certain ecosystem services, or indeed are there ecosystem services that are particularly valuable for that location. For the former, that could inform investment decisions and will inform investment decisions for the water company. So to target nature-based solutions in areas where the demand for these nature-based solutions and the resulting ecosystem service are particularly high, but the supply is low at the moment. And for the latter, where we have a high value of ecosystem service delivery, this would add additional protection to the site, even if it's not covered by any formal nature designation. So that also helps to protect the sites and the areas that are really valuable in terms of nature and natural capital provision. So that's only two examples on how these maps can be used. Then at the project level, we also ran some case studies together with the company. Here we see a comparison of two development scenarios with a focus on carbon storage. So the first one on the left-hand side, we see here if we create new neutral grassland underneath photovoltaic installations, so solar farm basically, as compared to scenario 2, where we create broadleaf woodland for the same area. And when we compare the results and look at especially carbon impacts, we see that for the photovoltaic carbon impact is quite significant for scenario A, but carbon storage in vegetation and soils would be reduced by 37% with this option. For the woodland option, woodland creation option, we of course don't have the photovoltaic, so that's 0, but the carbon storage increases, and also many of the other ecosystem services, especially regulating ecosystem services, increase quite significantly. And also the biodiversity impact of the woodland creation option is much higher. So when comparing the results, only looking at the natural capital score, the photovoltaic option, scenario A, seems favorable. But if we look across and have, for example, specific priorities for flood regulation and water quality regulation, for example, then option or scenario 2 might still be beneficial, because even if the natural capital score is lower, biodiversity score is higher, and also the specific scores is higher. So one of the opportunities of using the tool is to explicitly deal with these kind of trade-offs between different services as well. So which nature-based solution do we need? And what does it do for us? And does it do for us what we need from it? So it can help us to compare different nature-based solutions, for example. We also established natural capital accounts for the company using another tool developed by the UK Environment Agency. And here we can see that the overall natural capital value is estimated to be in the order of 13 billion pounds. And as one would expect, a main contributor to that is the water supply. But we can also see, for example, that climate regulation, recreation, and physical health benefits weigh quite heavily in the overall results. So we can also go beyond the scoring system and establish monetary values for ecosystem services. As I mentioned, one of the key contributions where we helped the company is to establish guidance and specific tools and adapted tools to assess natural capital for their estate. And I won't go into the details of that, but it's really a process plan, step-by-step guidance the company can use internally and then run natural capital assessments, and also then plan for enhancements on site as well as compensation off site as and where that is required. So some of the key achievements we achieved together with the company: we established a natural capital baseline, fulfilling the client's performance commitment 4 years earlier than required by the regulator. We use the Nature E tool to spatially map ecosystem service provision across the estate, and this will be used to inform investment decisions and the allocation of nature-based solutions. We provided strategy, guidance, and training for the water company to independently assess, manage, and report on natural capital impacts at project and corporate levels. And we developed a tailored nature optioneering tool for the company, enabling the client to rapidly compare the natural capital impact of different development footprints. So that is really only needs a couple of clicks to then see if this option development footprint more beneficial for natural capital, or is it another option, and that can then feed into the option selection. So in terms of the related services we as WSP offer, and that's by no means an exhaustive list. We provide tool training and knowledge exchange. Did some tool training earlier this day, for example. We can help with and establish natural capital strategies. We can conduct project and statewide assessments for natural capital. We can generate on the same model provision and opportunity maps. We can help to inform natural capital design with aim to enhance natural capital and achieve net gains for the environment. We can help a company more strategically to more broadly implement the natural capital approach. And we can create tools and also adapt tools for the specific needs of a company, and help with the identification and exploration of nature-related markets and investment opportunities. So last slide for today. Some key takeaways. Achieving our sustainability and net zero goals will not be possible without consideration of natural capital and the utilization of nature-based solutions. And that's because they provide so much more co-benefits than engineered solutions, for example. Nature-based solutions should be planned strategically to add the greatest value, including its co-benefits. For example, in places with high demand and low supply, such as for flood regulation. And tools are now available to effectively assess, manage, and demonstrate net gains for the environment. For example, the nature tool. So there's really nothing stopping us anymore to think about natural capital and use and utilize nature-based solutions to generate wider environmental enhancements for the benefit of society and nature. Thank you very much for your attention, and now we can take on some questions you might have.
Thank you, Oliver, for your presentation. I will mention again the housekeeping items. The presentation slides are available to download in the handout box, where you can click on additional links here on this PDF. This can be found on the GoToWebinar control panel, and please continue to log your questions in the question box on the GoToWebinar control panel. I will start with the first question. Does the nature tool integrate biodiversity net gain requirements, for example, for particular habitats as compensation, into the biodiversity score?
Yes, many thanks for the question. So for the international audience, biodiversity net gain is a specific English concept, and all new development essentially will be required to achieve biodiversity net gain, so an enhancement in biodiversity from next year on by at least 10%. The nature tool does not directly calculate biodiversity units or biodiversity net gain, and that is because there is already a dedicated government tool available, which is called the biodiversity metric, which needs to be used to calculate that. However, because of the importance of biodiversity, and indeed we often apply the nature tool alongside the biodiversity metric, the nature tool allows to import the biodiversity metric results, so that the results can be presented alongside each other. So if you look at this example, going back to the slide, all the natural capital bit, this bit here at the bottom, that's calculated directly by the nature tool, and the top bit, which is biodiversity, that's imported from the biodiversity metric. So the tool allows to demonstrate also the biodiversity impacts alongside the natural capital impacts.
Thank you. The next question relates to clients, the challenge with convincing clients. So how do we convince clients to take the nature-based approach, and how do we get clients to care about preserving land instead of developing?
Yes, many things, and this is it's a challenging one. It can be. I think there's a certain, but we can certainly see at a global level, but also in many nations, a general policy and also cultural shift that nature becomes hip in a way. Companies who care about sustainability and maybe signed up to sustainability as well as net zero or nature positive. These are all good policy hooks to convince clients to take on this approach because, as I mentioned before, we cannot really achieve sustainability without consideration of natural capital and nature-based solutions. There's often also a cost implication. So by implementing nature-based solutions, we can often reduce costs and at the same time add value, social value. And many companies will be keen on and have committed to demonstrating the added social value they provide. And that can easily be done through the nature tool, for example. That's another really good policy hook for this concept and for engaging clients on this journey to implement the natural capital approach and nature-based solutions. So there's no magic bullet. It really depends on where you are and which policies exist. It also depends on the specific sector. So certain sectors have more regulatory pressure, for example, than others. But overall, if we look at the landscape of policies and regulations, we will find many good reasons, let's say, for a client to take on this approach. It's not all. There's not always a stick. So we don't have this hard regulation that you must do it and the client must do, which would of course be ideal. But for clients that are generally perceptive to trying out something new and go a bit further than what is absolutely the minimum necessary requirement, then these clients tend to have an open ear for these ideas. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question relates to ecological and economic question about different approaches to assessing and quantifying nature-based solutions. Also, the question goes, how do you value and locate recreational enhancement, willingness to pay, to local survey and benefits transfers?
Yes, many thanks. So there are various approaches we can use to quantify and assess the impacts of changes to natural capital and ecosystem services. Here there are a couple of economic concepts mentioned and how that can be done, and which one to employ really depends on the situation. It depends on the scale and magnitude of the project. It also and the impact, therefore. And also it depends on the budget. So initially, especially, and for smaller projects, the benefit transfer approach I would recommend because that is the most cost-effective approach. It's less accurate than doing primary research on natural capital impacts, but it's something we can offer many clients at comparatively low costs. But if it's a very significant project, then we might conduct our own research and, for example, conduct choice experiments to reveal the preferences for certain ecosystem services, or indeed between different choices in terms of development and their relative impacts on natural capital. So bottom line, there's no right or wrong here. It really depends on the approach and on the project we face and we want to support.
Thank you. The next question is, can I use the nature tool outside of the UK, and also if you have examples to share outside of Europe?
Yes, so at the moment, as I mentioned, the tool is optimized for use in the UK. We have tested the tool in 2 Scandinavian countries on 2 Scandinavian projects, and these case studies can be downloaded from the website, which you can see here and access here on the left-hand side of the slide from the link. So it has been used outside, and it has been tested outside, but it's not optimized. I would say in most cases the model should work outside the UK as well, but there might be some data translation necessary. One example is we have specific data sets in the UK for the level of accessibility of green spaces, and if you want to use the tool outside the UK, then you would need to make amendments to that to translate your data into the format that's used by the tool. Having said that, we are starting to develop Nature Tool 2.0 at the moment, and we would be very happy to have conversations with you, as we have with various WSP colleagues already, to have, for example, a US or an Australian version of the Nature Tool in the future, which could be developed if it needs to be specifically geared towards the data landscape locally. And that wouldn't need an awful lot of money, but yes, it would need some funding, of course, and some budget.
Thank you. I will take the last question, just we're over time, so I will take the last question. All additional questions will be answered directly by Oliver. Do you have a broad cost per hectare for conducting nature assessments?
So I don't have a per hectare value, but we can conduct these assessments on more small scale projects. So where we not looking at landscape scale, for example. So let's say up to 20, 30 hectares for, I would say, about 5,000 euro. Sorry, 5,000 pounds. So it's not a massive cost factor. Yes, there are other services around that. So if we go into informing design on that basis, that adds a bit of cost. But just running the tool and an assessment and getting the outputs, it's actually not that expensive. It can actually be done for less than that.
Perfect. Thank you, Oliver, for a great presentation. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We hope to see you in our upcoming sessions. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you all. And please don't hesitate contacting me if you have any follow-on questions or would like to discuss.
Thank you. We will wrap up the session now. Have a wonderful day. Thanks.